Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
And my name is Jeff.
And we're going to answer your questions today, but first, I have a question. Jeff, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I made cookies last night. I'm very excited about that.
Cookies are always good.
Yeah. We're trying to like stock up on staples and things like that, but then like
You probably shouldn't put staples in cookies, Jeff.
no, stock up on things like like rice and the potatoes, that kind of deal.
Sure.
But we always like to treat ourselves here and there, and we were kind of like we had run out of treats, and I was thinking like, oh wait, there might have enough things in the pantry to make cookies, and I had just barely not enough. So the next day I ordered some groceries and made some cookies. So
okay. I had something sort of similar. I was really thirsty yesterday, and I hate to drink just water. I know that just water is good for you, but I never do it. I had run out of pop. I'd run out of soda. I'd even drank all of the juice because I haven't been to the store in a while, So we didn't have any pop. We didn't have any juice. And I drank all of our milk too. I love drinking milk, but I ran out of that too. And like I was going to go grocery shopping today. Like I have now since gone grocery shopping, but this was last night, and it was after everything would be closed. I was like, I'm really thirsty and I really don't want to just drink water. Surely there is something else I can drink. And so I was looking in the fridge, and I noticed that we had a bottle of lemon juice. And I thought, there's got to be a way I can make this into lemonade, right? So I Googled, but here's the thing. I didn't want to make a whole jug of lemonade. So I Googled single serving lemonade. And sure enough, there's a recipe for like a glass of lemonade. So I made myself a glass of lemonade.
So you just do like some lemon juice and sugar and water?
Yeah, that's basically, you like use hot water with the sugar to dissolve it, and then you put in cold water and lemon juice, and that's it. That's it.
Oh my gosh, Gabe.
I was so desperate that I made lemonade.
Not to drink plain water?
Not to drink plain water.
I haven't drank much other than plain water for months. Like maybe like I think Skylar and I ordered like a couple cans of Coke like a week or two ago, and then every now and then maybe a little bit of something, but mostly just water. Which like I am getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I gotta start sprucing it up a little bit. Like I got some like different flavored teas and stuff, so I might make some like iced tea or something like that. But But yeah, water's been mostly what I've been drinking for a while. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, Jeff.
I mean, it's fine. Like it, I bought a new filter, so it tastes good. Yeah, it tastes like water. So I don't know. It's whatever.
Okay.
So
cool. Okay, you want to go ahead and jump into this episode?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I want you to imagine that you are walking somewhere and you got lost.
Okay.
Because it's foggy out.
Okay, yeah.
So you got lost.
Real foggy. Got it.
Yeah. Give me David D20.
No.
Okay. Don't worry.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Never mind. I don't.
Okay. You get lost. No dice rolls involved. The DM declared that you got lost. However,
this is railroading.
Yes, it is very much railroading. You find a railroad actually, and you follow the railroad because you know that railroad leads to home or something.
Right.
Long story short, you get to the end of the railroad and it actually leads to a dragon's hoard. Sorry.
What?
It leads to the dragon's hoard.
Choo choo.
Sometimes I put effort into these. Sometimes. So today's magic item. Sorry, didn't actually. What did I do? Put that window. Hang on. Sorry, moved it over to the other side. Today's magic item is submitted by Dustin via Discord, and the item is congealed air. And though he screamed for aid, His cries died upon impact with the air. Contained within a simple glass bottle with a cork stopper, these appear to be spheres of gray marble. Closer inspection reveals an uncomfortable fact. They are slightly out of focus. They refuse to resolve into an identifiable state. Should a person remove a weightless sphere from its glass prison, the air touching it begins to thicken. All sound dies 5 feet from its source. Any spells with verbal components have their range and area of effect reduced to 5 feet. If a sphere gets wet, the water in the thickened air becomes an opaque gray. All sight, including dark vision and magical sight, is now limited to 5 feet. Each sphere creates an affected area 30 feet in diameter, lasting 1 hour. The effect wraps around walls so long as the air is continuous. Using multiple spheres creates a cumulative effect in both time and area. For example, 2 spheres would cover an area 60 feet in diameter and last for 2 hours. A new bottle contains 24 spheres, and a found bottle contains 2d10 plus 4. So, yeah, it's a jar with a sphere of solid fog, I guess. When you take it out of the bottle and it touches the air, it covers everything 15 feet in each direction in thick air that stops sound past a certain distance. And then if you were to get the sphere wet, it turns that thickened air into opaque fog. So this is a pretty hefty item, I would say.
Yeah.
I like how it interacts with certain things. Like, I like how it's not just that your speech can't reach 5 feet. If you cast a spell with verbal components, the spell only reaches 5 feet. That's really cool.
I wonder if you try to like cast fireball, if it detonates on your feet because you can't. Like, does fireball have a verbal component?
Yeah.
So like if you try to cast fireball inside this sphere, does the fireball just fall to your feet?
I imagine, yeah, it would blow up 5 feet away from you.
Yeah, it would just fall to your feet and explode.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, just blow yourself up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's really cool. So like this sort of thing could be defensive because you can stop people from seeing you, stop people from hearing you. Can also be used offensively because now that caster sucks to be him.
So wait, the sphere gets wet.
Yeah.
Now, is that when you use it? Wait, how do you use it? You
basically just take it out of the bottle.
You just take it out of the bottle and then it expands?
Yeah.
Okay. But then, so if the sphere gets wet, so if any water is within that area, the sphere then becomes a fog.
Right. If this were put into a 5th edition game, I think it would be good to add just a little bit more mechanics to it. For example, does it take an action to remove one or more spheres from the bottle? What sort of action or anything is also needed to add water to it? Do you have to have a water source nearby? Do you have to throw it into a lake? Can you pour a water skin onto it? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Oh no, but this is really interesting though. I like this.
When he first posted this, I think I replied to Dustin saying like, didn't we just get an item like this? And I don't know what part of this item I thought sounded familiar, but something about it seemed like something we had just covered, but I checked. we have not covered this item before.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's such an interesting item.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the aesthetic effect of, if you look at them, the spheres themselves are slightly out of focus.
Right, yeah, because it's like you're looking at just a very dense marble of air.
Yeah. Yeah, just like a little unnerving, unnatural, visible thing about this. I like little details like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is a really neat item. I wonder if maybe you could even the easiest way to introduce this is the players go into like a dungeon or something and they enter a room where the air is already really thick, And then
Sure.
so that they're introduced to the effects of it before they actually encounter the item.
So yeah, they find the bottle is like on a shelf, but it's tipped over.
Sure.
And like, you know, and like some of the marbles are falling out and then creating the thick air effect in the room of the dungeon.
Yeah.
And then they might eventually find it and cork it and then, you know, figure out what maybe it might be.
Yeah. I think the fact that a new bottle contains so many of these things is kind of crazy. I might reduce the number that's in a bottle, but I don't know. I'd have to try it out. Just because, like, yeah, what if you get a bottle and you just, like, dump out all of them?
Yeah, 24 hours of thick air in a...
like, several hundred feet radius.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Goodness.
I don't know. I mean, that's cool. That's not a bad thing. I just... It does seem... I feel like most players would not need that many at a time. But who knows?
Yeah, well, it's like that thing with consumables in any game. It's when you only have like a couple of them, you might as well have none.
Yeah, good point.
Because you know I gotta save this for a rainy day that will never come because it won't be enough rain for my precious consumable.
Sure.
But if you got 24 of those bad boys, you're like, you know, we're gonna just start chucking these things.
Yeah, that's a pretty valid point. So yeah.
I don't know.
I don't really have much else to say about this. I think it's a really cool item. I think the possibilities of what you can do with it are pretty endless. It's really cool. I've never seen anything like this as much as I thought I had.
I can imagine you can get creative, like the DM might get creative on like other things that it has effects with. So like, you know, getting it wet creates fog, but if it's introduced to fire or something, you know, like like I don't know, maybe the fire burns hotter because of the higher, I mean, like, not to get too realistic science-y, but like, you know, more condensed air probably means more oxygen, which means more, you know, burning, I guess.
Sure.
But
you know, your voice would probably be lower in an area of this.
Oh yeah, be like anti-helium.
Yes, because the air itself is more dense.
Right. Yeah.
Bringing a bit too much science into this, I think, but yeah, no, it's really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks a lot, Dustin. Once again, that was Congealed Air, submitted by Dustin via Discord. Jeff, if anybody else wanted to submit magic items for the Dragon's Horde, or if they wanted to submit questions for us to discuss, or stories for the Funeral Pyre, how would they do so?
They could send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com or join us on our Interparty Discord at bit.ly/interpartydiscord.
That's correct. And before we go any further, we have a giveaway to give away today.
Oh.
As usual, we're giving away a copy of Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 1, courtesy of Crit Academy. It is a great supplement from the Crit Academy podcast that contains 25 character concepts, 25 encounter concepts, 25 magic items, 25 DM tips, player tips, and monster variants. Tons and tons of content for players, for DMs, for everybody. So much great stuff in this supplement. So Jeff, who is getting a free copy of this great supplement today?
Our winner is David E.
Winner. Gobble, gobble, gobble. Yes, congratulations, David E. You should be getting that in your email pretty soon, within the next few days. If you haven't gotten it in a week, let us know. Also, be sure to check your spam folder, and be sure to leave Crit Academy a review. You know, read over the supplement once you're familiar with it. Leave a review on DM's Guild, Drive-Thru-RPG, or whatever. Let them know what you think. Hopefully it was good. If there's anything negative in there, they can use that to you know, make better products in the future. Hopefully it's good, though. I think it's a great product. I helped write it, so I have a bit of an insider scoop on whether I think it's good or not. But but yeah, it's really good. And hey, if you like it, Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 2 is out as well, so you can check out that one as well. Nice. So yeah, big thank you to Crit Academy for facilitating this. And Jeff, if anybody else wanted to be like David E. and they wanted to win a free copy of this supplement, how would they do so?
They can send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com with Unearthed Tips and Tricks in the subject line.
That's correct. And next up, I want to thank all of our wonderful patrons for helping make the show happen. For anybody not familiar with Patreon, it's an online platform where you can pledge to donate a certain amount of money per month to the creator of your choice. And we have a Patreon campaign at patreon.com/interpartyconflict. if you go there and you check out the different tiers that we've got various rewards on there. We've got outtakes. We've got monthly bonus podcast called InterPatronConflict. We've got a monthly Roll20 game. I think the day this one goes out is going to be our next game. So, among other stuff, we've got some cool rewards on there. So, go to patreon.com/InterPartyConflict, check out the rewards, see if anything appeals to you, and consider helping out the show. You get some cool stuff in return, and you help keep the lights on, help keep us, keeping the show as good a quality as we can. All right, and then just one more quick thing. Check out the other podcasts on the Crit Nation Fellowship. Check out Crit Academy. I mentioned them. They're at critacademy.com. On that show, they make new and reusable content for players and DMs alike. Also, check out Brute Force and Ignorance. I believe they've been on hiatus for a little while, but they are an actual play podcast on the network. They've got tons of episodes out there for you to listen to. Also, check out D&D Character Lab. They have stopped making episodes altogether, but they've still got tons of episodes where they made characters every week and pitted them against each other. And you can go and listen to that anytime you want. So go check those out on all those great podcasts on the Crit Nation Fellowship. Enough with all the plugs. Let's get into some questions, Jeff.
Okay, our first question comes from Scott H. on email, and they ask, do you have any experience converting D&D to be a GM-less game?
Yeah, so as anybody who's played Dungeons & Dragons knows, when you play Dungeons & Dragons, a pretty crucial part of the equation, a Dungeon Master serves a very important role in the game, creating the content first off, facilitating the game, and then, making judgment calls and so on and so on. So if you've played other types of RPGs, there are RPGs that don't have a GM. I don't know if I've played any of them personally, but I know that they're out there, and I've read a little bit about them. So the question here is, like, if you were to make D&D into one of those games that doesn't have a dungeon master or a game master, how would you do so? So I guess to answer the question, no, I don't. I don't have any experience with that. However, if we were to do so, what are some changes that we might make to the game?
There is one thing I can think of, at least when it comes to like something like combat.
Okay.
The Dark Souls board game, has enemies, enemy mechanics that function without a dungeon master.
Yeah,
they basically just sort of have like a sort of set behavior that they follow. Mm-hmm. And certain things will trigger certain behaviors. And so it'll be they move in this direction and then they turn, and then on the next turn they'll turn and move in that direction or whatever. There's just sort of like a little, list of actions that they do.
Yeah.
And then the bosses are a little bit more complicated where they have like a whole deck of things that they do and that can switch up here and there. So there are some games that have mechanics that could work in a D&D game without a DM.
Sure.
It's really when you get into the actual story and intrigue and puzzles and dungeon layouts and things like that it gets really tricky.
Yeah.
You'd have to have somebody make the adventure for you ahead of time.
Okay.
And then not participate,
Yeah. Or as far as role playing goes, if it was almost entirely improv based, if everybody was really good at improv, it could just be one player, suggests, oh, look, it's that NPC that we already know, quote unquote, when actually this NPC is being introduced for the first time. A player could just kind of spontaneously create an NPC and create a connection to that NPC. And then maybe another player could, volunteer to play as that NPC for a little while, introduce some plot and such. And then other players could, again, spontaneously come up with, oh, and then that leads to this, and then that leads to this, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see maybe it's sort of like everybody's taking turns being the DM in some fashion.
Yeah.
It might not be as rigid as okay, now it's your turn, now it's your turn, now it's your turn, but like you said, it could be more improv is more like improv and more spontaneous, It's like, I stumbled in a ditch and it leads into a dungeon. Let's go explore this. And everybody's like, okay, sure.
Yeah. It definitely requires everybody to be participating pretty heavily, because I mean, you know, I mentioned that the dungeon master does do a lot of work, and so when you don't have the dungeon master there, all the players are going to have to share that workload. Everyone's going to kind of have to be game for whatever, you know, if there isn't a quote unquote word of God in that the dungeon, whatever the dungeon master says goes, you kind of need, well, whatever anybody says goes. Or like you were saying, Jeff, you kind of take turns. Each person has a time where they can say things that this has to be taken as fact. Yeah. You can't really have players that are like constantly butting heads and arguing over, you know, no, that doesn't happen, and so on.
Yeah, it has to be yes and.
Yeah. Yeah, it basically needs to be an improv exercise.
Yeah.
Now, I really think I don't want to use this as my main answer, because I do want to try to answer the question as much as possible. But part of me I do feel the need to say that I don't think that this is a good idea, specifically for D&D. I think that a lot of the time people they may only know D&D. They may not know other types of other types of role-playing games. And so their gut reaction when they want to try something new is to take D&D and then, you know, take a hacksaw to it and try to turn it into something else.
Right.
Which some things you can do that, some things you can't. Some things you're really not playing D&D anymore. You're playing a completely new game, which might not be well suited. The framework might not be well suited for what you're trying to do. You can take D&D and you can hack it into something else, but it might be better to look up a GM-less game and then figure out how to make that feel more like D&D instead of making D&D play more like that other game.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm not trying to say that's the only answer. I'm not trying to say you shouldn't do this. Just, I do feel the need to say, maybe try looking at other games. If nothing else, look at other games for inspiration.
Yeah.
I'll try to even find some GM-less games to put in the show notes as examples of stuff to do. Because, like, if there's an easier way to do it, then you're probably going to have more fun doing it that way. Even if it doesn't have the D&D brand on it, you know, it might be a better idea to start with a good base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it is. I can understand it. As somebody who only has really played D&D for the most part, like a couple little things here and there, like it's hard to get away from D&D even when you want something more out of it.
Yeah. I feel like if you are going to do something like this, you probably want to make good use of like random encounter charts, random treasure charts. There's a wealth of like dungeon generators and stuff out there. Encounter generators. If you use stuff like that, you can, again, not counting roleplay, because that is kind of a whole separate thing. If your intention is just to play through a dungeon and, you know, fight some monsters and stuff, you can probably just create a random dungeon fairly easily and have some fun, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like, there's plenty of like video games that are basically just that. They're just co-op dungeon crawls with randomly generated, like, you know, like play through like a Diablo clone or something like that with somebody, and you basically got the same thing just with pictures.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I don't think it's impossible to have a good time playing D&D in that style.
Sure.
Play it almost like a roguelike, you know, a video game with your friends, but you're doing it on tabletop paper and pencil, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that could still be fun.
Have you ever played a game called Knights of Pen and Paper?
No.
It is, I think it might have a sequel or two, but I got it a long time ago on like a Humble Bundle or something. It's a relatively simple, you know, video game RPG. And the way that it plays, it's been a while since I played it, so I apologize if I get some details wrong, but the way that it plays is you've got in front of you there's a little table and you've got like 4 players sitting at that table. And then I think depending on what class they are, they're like wearing different outfits. And then it's kind of whenever you want to like go into a dungeon or something, you decide what encounter you're going to have. you decide, okay, I want to fight this encounter with some bats. And then it brings up some bat enemies. And then you go turn by turn. You choose your attacks. You defeat that battle. And then after that, okay, do we want to fight another battle here? Do we want to go somewhere else? And so on. And it really struck me as a good way to portray a game like D&D in a video game where the players are in charge. Because there is, like, in the game, there is kind of a dungeon master. Like, I don't think you see the dungeon master. I think it's just sometimes the players will have dialogue and the dungeon master will respond from off screen. But it really felt, just playing this game, it really felt like, oh, this is kind of like if I was playing a game of D&D, except I was playing all of the people. I think the monsters still have some AI to determine what attacks they're going to do and so on. But you choose the encounters, you then go from player to player, and you have each of them make an attack and so on. And I don't know. Again, I'm forgetting some of the details because it's been a while, but that game I think would be a good, I don't know, example to use for like what could combat kind of look like. So if you made a random dungeon, put some random encounters in there, and then maybe periodically, if you did get into combat, maybe each turn a different player takes control of a different monster or something.
Yeah.
I think that could do the job, I guess.
Yeah.
Again, it would be weird. It would be quite different than D&D.
Yeah. It would not be the same. It would not be the same game.
Yeah.
Like some changes would definitely have to be made, or you just, like you said, find the game that fits that role better.
Yeah. And hey, if you try it and you don't like it, maybe that can give you an idea of what you wanted that wasn't there. Just a simple play test of something like that can kind of give you a push in the right direction so that okay, this didn't work, but this did work. Let's focus on the thing that did work, maybe downplay the thing that didn't work or try to replace it with something else. And so on. It's definitely it's a strange thing to try to do. I'm sure people have tried to do it. I doubt Scott H is the first person to come up with this idea. So, try it out. Let us know if it works and what your experience was like.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
Yeah.
All right, our next question comes from Soul Dealer 8 on Reddit, and they ask, in a world where magic exists that lets you speak to animals, is eating animals or using them for labor morally justifiable?
Sure. I thought this was an interesting question. It is kind of one of those things you got to think about when dealing with a game like D&D, where there's, all this magic that has existed for a very long time.
Right. Do they eat the Pokemon or what?
That's a good question.
Because, there are some, of the show, there's some episodes where it seems like they do.
Yeah.
And then other episodes, it's like, really? Do they? Anyway.
Similarly, if you've ever seen the show BoJack Horseman, it's not they don't pay a ton of attention to it, but there are definitely references made to the fact that despite the fact that people and animals all are they are all sentient and they all coexist and so on, people do still eat meat. There's an episode where it's just a little gag at the beginning of a scene where a character orders a steak at a restaurant and his waitress is a cow. Yeah. And she sort of gives him crap about it.
Right.
And then there's another episode where they're they sort of do get into the logistics of chicken farms where a chicken that was meant to become food escapes, and then the main characters become friends with her and then try to find her a new home so that she won't get killed and eaten. In that episode, they do sort of say, I mean, this is kind of a tangent, but they do sort of say that there's a difference between animals that are bred to be food and animals that are bred to be people. They don't really get into what that difference is.
Right. That's some of the wackiness of that show.
Right. So I mean, this is a thing that some people have put thought into in various intellectual properties.
Right. So so where you have speak with animal as a spell, how do you justify being able to eat those animals that you can commune with? I mean, Well, as far as I understand, at the very least, speak with animals doesn't make the animal intelligent.
Correct.
It just lets you communicate with them.
Yeah.
And if they have a low intelligence, you might only get like little bits of information. Like you can ask them very simple questions and they might be able to tell you the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Or they might not. I don't know. Like speaking with an animal doesn't necessarily mean they're going to cooperate. At least I don't think that's what the spell does.
Sure. There are some things about this question that I think the question is making a few assumptions that aren't necessarily true, and although they don't, responses to those assumptions aren't necessarily answering the question. It is a way to justify. Let me get into what I'm saying. So, in D&D, yes, you can speak with animals. You can also speak with plants.
Right.
So does that mean you can't eat plants either?
Yeah. What do you do then?
Exactly. Like, what can you eat? If in D&D, you can speak with inanimate objects if you want to. You can speak with literally anything. So if your metric for whether you're allowed to eat it is, can I speak with it? You're probably going to go hungry.
Yeah.
Also, being unable to speak doesn't necessarily make you more eligible to be food. We don't eat mute people, for example.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So
we here at InterPartyConflict take a hard stance against eating mute people.
Right. I was about to make a joke, but I was like, no, there's no need for a joke there. So it's a complex question because it does kind of point to some of the morally gray areas of living, as a person.
Mm-hmm.
The way I see it is, if you can justify eating animals in the first place, you can justify eating animals that you can talk to.
Sure. Like, I talk to dogs. I use a baby voice and talk to them.
To be fair, I don't think I would eat a dog.
Well, right. But I mean, it's still an animal, it's still another living being. And there are other living beings that I do eat, it's like, but
sure.
what is actually, other than physically, what's the difference?
Yeah.
What's the difference in morality between eating a cow and eating a dog?
Right. And here's the thing. If I had a pet cow, I would not eat it.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
Like, if I had an animal that I talked to, even if it doesn't talk back, I would not eat that animal.
Yeah. Cows are adorable.
Yeah.
So tasty.
So I think in a world like D&D where magic exists, I think people would have the exact same cognitive dissonance as they have in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I value the lives of animals, but yes, I also like to eat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try not to think about the friendliness of animals while I'm eating animals.
Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with availability of, easy to obtain food.
Sure.
Cows, you can raise cattle for meat, and it's you get a lot of food out of that. It's an easy thing. Well, it's not easy, but it's a thing we know how to do, so we do it, and that's a good way that's how you get food. So it's the same in a D&D world where it's there's going to be farms with cattle and stuff like that.
Sure.
And your druid, your elf druid with speak with animals, once per day could go and talk to those cows and ask them have you seen have you seen the orcs that have been coming through here? And they might point you in the right direction, but I don't know. It is sort of it is one of those things where the more you think about it, the more problematic it gets, but I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, and sorry, I want to clarify. I think I said cognitive dissonance earlier. I'm always confusing that. I meant to say cognitive compartmentalization. Is actually, okay. I recently was using that term and somebody corrected me, and that is, I keep using it wrong. So compartmentalization specifically is what you're doing when it's yes, I believe this one thing, but I'm not going to think about that while I do this other thing that may be at odds with it.
Right.
So
yes,
I could imagine a person I could imagine a druid being okay with eating animals, but if they speak to a specific animal enough, they're like, oh, I can't eat that animal anymore.
Sure. Yeah,
that could happen. It happens in real life.
Quirk, actually. That'd be a little character quirk too. Where you have speak with animal, but you also eat animals. But if you ever commune with an animal, that animal's now off the table. Like,
sure.
Literally.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, but then maybe they have to like, they can only do it once per day, and they have to like choose which animals they're talking to, and like, like, well, how do they decide which animal they're going to cast it on, or whatever.
Now, do you think that there is for the purpose of this discussion, do you think that there is a significant difference between using animals for food and using animals for manual labor? Like using oxen to pull a plow or whatever?
Sure. I mean, yeah, there's a difference. One equals death and one equals basically slave labor. But I mean, like, there is a difference there, but
sure.
But again, it's still a big moral dilemma.
Yeah, I do feel like there is a difference, but I don't know it well enough to express what I believe that difference is.
Right.
So,
like, if everybody in the campaign world had access to speak with animals on a regular basis, I'm sure things would be different.
Sure.
Like, there would be less eating of meat.
Yeah, still not zero though. People would still do it.
Yeah, people would still do it. In a world where your players have access to it, maybe those players would think twice about eating meat. But that doesn't mean that the world is going to change, just because a small number of powerful magic users have access to this one spell that, like, is useful in rare occasions. Like, it's not often you're gonna turn the tide by being able to speak to an animal.
Sure.
Like that, I think I've used that spell once to like ask for directions, basically. Like,
yeah. I remember there was one time, maybe this is even what you're thinking of. There was a game I was running where there was like an intersection, a fork in the road or something, and there was like a turtle in a nearby river that you guys asked for directions from.
Right. Yeah. Well, because I misremembered the spell I had. I thought I had speak with plants.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, I gotta look for a tree or something and ask the tree, because it was like the fork in the road, and we were trying to find like an old abandoned city or something like that, like some sort of town that like nobody lives there anymore. So it's like it's off the beaten path. So we was like, okay, I got to find something that was around when that city was still active.
Right.
So I thought, a tree. But then I remembered, oh no, it's speak with animal. How about like a tortoise or a turtle or something? They live for a long enough time.
Sure.
But I would never eat a turtle.
I agree. I'm the same way.
You're too cute.
I know. I even remember I used to really like the show Iron Chef.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was like this it was like their anniversary episode or something like that, where one of the theme ingredients was turtle.
Oh.
And I had to like skip forward to like the middle point of the episode because I didn't want to see them preparing turtle.
Yeah.
So I just feel like if you are in a world where there is magic like this, probably much is going to be the same. However, I think the way people look at things are going to be different. Like, if every creature in the world was sentient, I don't think that there would be nobody that ate sentient creatures. I just think that the people that did it would have different justifications for doing it. There would be different biases or different, like, oh, we only eat creatures that are this level of sentient or something. I don't know. It's real kind of weird and kind of gross and creepy to think about this sort of thing. But if you want it to be a part of your game, if you want it to be a plot point or a world building point or something, go ahead and have it be an issue. Have the question come up. How do you justify, that's actually probably the best way to deal with this. Ask the characters how they justify eating animals in a world where you can speak with animals. See what the players think. In fact, whatever the players think, you can build the world building around that.
Sure, yeah.
Let the players dictate how the rest of the world feels about it. If you are confident in how mature your players will be about it, I mean.
I'm just my brain just created a scenario where it's like the druid of the party is trying to convince, like, say, the barbarian, to stop eating meat, because the animals have feelings too and stuff like that. And the barbarians, like, and they ask the barbarians, like, what's your justification for eating these animals, even though I can commune with them?
Yeah.
And they might say, like, I've never met an animal that can make me laugh. And so, like, he just continues to eat meat or something. And then the druid will then spend the rest of the campaign trying to find an animal that's funny enough so that it makes the barbarian laugh, to get the barbarian to stop eating animals.
Yeah. I mean,
he, like, keeps casting speak with animals or something, or commune with nature or something like that, to try to, like, put on, like comedic acts or something.
I mean, I love the idea of that, because it is a side quest that is entirely player driven.
Right.
If a player decided to try and spend most of the campaign convincing another player of something, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm picturing the druid, like, running ahead of the group in the middle of the night so that it can teach a specific animal a joke, so that when the rest of the party gets there,
like the animal tells a joke, but the barbarian, like, there's like a tell in the joke that makes it obvious that the druid taught the joke to him.
Sure.
It's like, how did the squirrel know my name? Like,
right. I mean, I like the idea of this. Again, it is a very philosophical question that doesn't really have a satisfying answer. But yeah, if you can have some fun with it in your group, go ahead and have some fun with it, I guess.
All right, our next question comes from Tom and Jerry Gergich on Reddit. How do you explain the difference between intelligence and wisdom?
Yeah, so I think this could have a simple answer. There's probably different ways to look at it, but I kind of have a pretty simple way of looking at these two ability scores. There's a little, like, meme that's been going around of strength is the ability to crush a tomato. Dexterity is the ability to dodge a tomato. Constitution is... I don't remember what Constitution was. Intelligence is knowing that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put tomato in a fruit salad. And then charisma is being able to sell a tomato-based fruit salad. And then there's usually an addendum onto this that's something about, like, oh, that'd be salsa. And then someone else is like, I found the bard. So I think that...
That's really good.
I'm surprised you haven't seen it.
No, I haven't seen it.
A million places. I feel like it's the common thing to think of wisdom as being, like, how wise you are, not, like how street smart you are compared to how intelligent, how much data you have in your head. Right. I think that's, although that makes sense colloquially,
right.
I don't really think that that's what wisdom is in the D&D sense.
Sure.
The way that I think of wisdom in the D&D sense, wisdom is your perception.
Yeah.
Like, intelligence is pretty much what you think it is. It is the data, it is the knowledge you have, it is the accumulation of everything that your brain is capable of. Basically, it's like, how strong is your mind?
Right.
And
intelligence is how much you know of the world. Wisdom is how you perceive, like, is the ability to perceive that world.
Yes, I agree. Kind of like how strength is I think of strength as, like, your capacity, the capacity that your body has for performance. I think of intelligence as the capacity your mind has for performance. So it's the knowledge you've accumulated. It's also your potential for knowledge. The higher your intelligence, the more you're able to learn.
Right. Yeah. Because if you have a high intelligence, your knowledge skills are higher. So, like, yeah, you're more likely to know a thing by rolling that die.
Sure. And then, so I said, like, wisdom I think of as your perception. So, similarly, wisdom is used for perception checks.
Sure.
For seeing things that you are not using data to analyze. So, like, investigation is intelligence, because you're not just seeing what you can see, you are basing what you are seeing off of knowledge that you have, and the way you know how things work and so on. So wisdom is how well you're able to just see things, also how well you're able to hear things, how well you're able to, feel something like with your hands, like tactile sense.
Right.
It's also it's not necessarily just your like vision and hearing, but it's also like what you're able to perceive, what you're able to intuit. So that's why it's like your insight as well. Insight could be seen as being intelligence-based, but I think that it works as perception-based because I'm talking to this person. I'm able to perceive nonverbal cues that they're giving, maybe just some sort of like je ne sais quoi, I guess, about what they're saying. I'm able to perceive that much about their whole thing, and that's why I'm able to get an insight into whether they are telling the truth or whatever. I also think of it being a pretty good defense against, things that would make you make a wisdom save, like a lot of mind affecting effects and such, because if you're able to perceive what is real, it's easier for you to set aside what is not real. If there's a voice in your head that's telling you to do something, if you're able to hear and see and feel the world around you, you know that there's something different about this voice that's in your head and such. So I don't know. Personally, that's how I differentiate intelligence and wisdom. There's probably other ways to do it, but in most cases, in my experience, that's the best way to think of it.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking like the survival skill goes off of wisdom, which does make sense still because like, you're spotting tracks and things like that. But I feel like there is an amount of intelligence that goes into like tracking things with survival, or even just like basic survival things, like, knowing it's not just being able to find the medicinal herb to make medicine or whatever. It's also being able to use it. So you're like, you would use your nature skill in conjunction with it in some way. So like there could be things that like a DM might let a player do. Like, let's say you are like tracking something through, a forest or something. So you're using your wisdom to make your survival checks, but then like, they might throw in a couple nature checks in there too.
Sure.
And to make it like, so maybe you'll get that much closer to finding what you're looking for. So like, so they can intertwine in some ways. I feel like
they can. And I think because medicine is wisdom based.
You're right.
And I've heard people say like, oh, it should be intelligence based. And I think that there is a place for intelligence based medicine checks.
Yeah.
But I think that when you're doing a medicine check on someone, you're not reading a book and being like, okay, well, the book says this, therefore take 2 of these and call me in the morning. I think most of the time when you're making a medicine check, you're, checking the patient's vital signs. You're checking for, you're looking at the wound, seeing what color it is and what it smells like and so on.
Right.
And then basing what you do off of that. Again, perception based.
Bread moldy enough to have penicillin on it or something, whatever.
Sure. So I think, again, there is a place for intelligence in a lot of those situations, but I do still think that perception is the biggest part of it.
Yeah.
Now, as far as spell casting, because there are, classes that wizards and druids and such, clerics and druids and such get their spell casting from their wisdom rather than their intelligence.
Yeah.
I guess in keeping with the idea of it being perception, I kind of view perception in that, or wisdom in that case, as being, it's how well you are able to perceive the greater power. The greater power is out there. Only certain people are able to hear it. And when I say hear, I mean with air quotes, like if you are able to feel the connection that every being has with nature and so on.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're able to perceive the force of nature more than somebody else was, and are then able to manipulate it to cast spells.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I think that there was a quote from one of the Sage Advice, I think Jeremy Crawford. Somebody asked, why aren't warlocks wisdom based? And apparently they actually with 5th edition, they were going to make warlocks wisdom based because it is so much closer to that of a cleric or a druid.
Yeah.
But in playtesting, people didn't like it. They wanted it to be charisma.
Huh.
So they went ahead and just kept it as charisma.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. I never would have thought of that, but
yeah.
Okay.
That would have been interesting because like, I feel like wisdom, like I've recently in the few characters that I've been putting together, like I've been trying to like do more wisdom focus because like I've been doing a lot of charisma based characters for a while.
Sure.
Or a bunch of like mostly strength or charisma. And I'm like, I got to look into some of these other ones here. So I'm like, all right, what can I do with wisdom? Like what kind of character can I make with wisdom? Like, all right, started looking into cleric and things like that. So like, yeah, if there was like if warlock was wisdom based, that's interesting.
Yeah. It's and like I think they even added that like if you wanted to play warlock as a wisdom based class instead of charisma based class, it probably wouldn't upset the game at all. So
sure. Yeah.
If a player came to me and wanted to try that, I might be willing to let them do it.
Yeah. In fact, I'd say like because of all the other charisma based like casting stuff, it's more, at least with multi-classing, it's easier to work with charisma than wisdom.
Okay. Makes sense.
But yeah, because like you could like there's the warlock paladin like combination that's like really nasty, or warlock sorcerer can also be really like you can really beef up your eldritch blast and stuff like that. So there's ways to do min-maxing with charisma more than there is with wisdom. I think again I've only been looking into wisdom characters recently, in 5th edition. So, but I don't think it would be a major like shift in power if you change those. But although thinking about it. You could argue either way, just because like charisma is like you're sort of like schmoozing your patron,
Yeah,
you're
that's
like,
how I think of it.
It's like, hey, patron guy, why don't you give me a little bit more power?
Right.
Like, well, it's like, why don't you let me cast this spell right now? Wouldn't that be great? Poof,
Yeah. Yeah, and I really like that interpretation of it. Mm-hmm. Again, I would be down for trying out with wisdom instead, but I personally like the idea, like the playtesters, I like the idea of it being a charisma based caster.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be against a wisdom base. That's interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for our regular questions for today. But we do still have our social media questions. Our last one was, if you could set up a permanent portal anywhere in the world to anywhere else in the world, where would you put it? Where would it lead? And what would the key be to activate it? Do you recall what your answer was?
I don't know. I don't remember what the specifics. I think a hula hoop was involved, but I basically want I would want a portal from my house to a like cottage on a lake or something.
Sure.
like a little vacation spot. That way, like at the end of a long day at work, I'm like, I'd really like to just sit by a lake and just like maybe do some fishing or just nothing.
Yeah.
Like instead of like being like, darn, I wish it was the weekend so I can go and drive out to the lake or whatever. I can just step through a door and there I am, and then come back in time to go back to work the next day. So like, I feel like there are way more creative things to do with a portal.
Sure.
But I think that's the simplest way to make life a little bit easier.
Yeah. And I think I was torn, and I still am torn between having one that leads to my work, so I wouldn't have a really long commute every day, or having one that leads to, like, I think I said maybe down in Tennessee when I lived down there. It was really nice where we lived. Yeah. So just something that lets me go down there and then go by a lake, like what you were saying.
Right.
So we got a few responses, not a ton, but over on Facebook, Dan W. says, a portal from my house in England to my friend John's house in Tokyo. You need to walk up to the gate and say, beer? And voila. Instant door to one of the coolest places on the planet with one of the coolest people on the planet, and hopefully a beer as you step through.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that would be neat if the portal gave you something as you went through it.
Right, like you walk through and you just automatically have a beer in hand.
Yeah. Nathan H. says, a portal from where I live currently, Minneapolis, to where I'm from, Los Angeles, so that I could see my family's dog. And my family, I guess, whenever I wanted.
Good save.
It's pretty good. Over on Reddit, just got a couple. Stop Calling Me Jesus says, when sitting in the driver's seat of my car, I engage a secret combination of buttons and switches. Once activated, a portal opens up between me and the car seat that allows me to fall in a seated position onto the toilet at my house. Now, as long as I can reach my car, I never have to go to the bathroom in public restrooms again. And once I am done, I jiggle the handle and I'm back in my car.
Oh my God. You know, like, yeah, like on a long trip, it's like, I don't want to go to the bathroom at a rest stop. I want to be I want to be in my own bathroom. Like, totally get it.
Yeah, I guess, that's one way to do it.
A portal that just turns your car seat into a toilet, into your home toilet.
Devil's advocate here. I feel like it would be easier, and by easier I mean physically possible as opposed to portals, which are not real. You could put a toilet in your car. Just saying.
That's not the same.
I know it's not the same, but anyway. Alstar the Minotaur says, I want a portal that teleports me to my favorite Indian restaurant whenever I open my fridge and then back when I'm done eating. No more looking into my fridge disappointedly when I don't see anything I want to eat.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, your fridge opens up to the kitchen of your favorite restaurant.
Yeah. On Twitter, Quallywood Squares says, I'd set up a portal from my garden shed on Vancouver Island to either my wife's or my childhood homes outside of Toronto. With the costs, logistics, and now the pandemic, we haven't seen our family in a long time, and making that trip with our young kids isn't currently doable. Then they also added, our youngest has several great-grandparents she's never met, one is 93, and can no longer travel. It would be a good thing for all of us to have some more family time. The key would be my shed key, which I would still keep locked. As much as I miss them, I don't want any pop-ins. You don't want your family coming to visit you without you knowing.
Just a bunch of pounding from the shed, the neighbors complaining like, is your shed haunted?
There you go.
No, it's just my family.
All right, and then we just got a few on Discord. Damien the DM says, work and my house key. I know that might sound lame, but imagine having zero commute ever. This is also a portal that would be used multiple times a day, 4 days a week, 5 or 6 if we get overtime back. And with no commute, not only would you never be late and could quote unquote leave for work 5 minutes before it's time to clock in, but you can pop back home every break. And that's pretty good, actually. If I had one that led to my work, I could just hop home, grab something, from the fridge, hop back over to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you take your lunch breaks at home and you don't even they wouldn't even know you were gone.
Yeah. When we lived in Tennessee, there was a very short period where I worked a job that was literally a block from our house or from our apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was neat. I could come home on my lunch break, but it was only for a little while and then I got laid off. So,
I've thought about that's it. Like coming home for lunch sort of thing. My mother used to come home for lunch, like I wouldn't say every day, but most days.
Okay.
And she did, we did not live, I would say it's at least a 20-minute drive.
Okay.
So I don't know why, how she did it. I don't know. I guess, those were the days and, were a job when they gave you a lunch break, they gave you a lunch break, it wasn't like, it's like, oh, you get 30 minutes, go do it. Here it is. It was like, oh, you get an hour to take whenever you want or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I'm trying to think how did she manage that? Maybe she had a portal.
Maybe she had a time turner. That's what it was.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That explains so much.
That explains everything. Peace Roy Pancake says, my house and Seoul, South Korea in front of my favorite restaurant. Eating out is so much cheaper in Korea. Anytime I didn't want to cook, I just pop on over and get some dinner. Also, while I love flying, I hate the stress of the airport. Plus, flights are super expensive. Yeah. So I could save on time and money in all those ways. Even getting a flight from Korea to Australia, where my grandparents live, would be much cheaper. A win on all fronts.
Yeah, I always see all the videos of different Korean street food and stuff like that, and it's being able to go play, being able to have a portal to go to somewhere where there's cheap good food.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, and then Peach Joy Pancakes added, I totally forgot to mention a key. I'm not entirely sure what it would be, but given my weird obsession with big dangly keychain accessories, it would probably be something ridiculous, taking up entirely too much space in my bag. But, if it's on my actual keys, at least I won't lose it. Autumn Wind says, it would be in my shower. It has a TARDIS shower curtain. It would go to, I don't know, some tropical island or beach with some local selling grilled chicken on a stick nearby. And the key would be a specific combination of turning the shower knobs. You could totally activate it accidentally, and of course it would make a whooshing noise. There you go. Stilskin Kupo 84 says, practically speaking, now that we are in COVID days, I would probably have one between work and my mud room. The key would be dropping the Tugger key into my work vest. Tugger being, I think, the thing he drives at work. The one I would get the most enjoyment out of, however, would go between my kitchen and either Jet's Pizza or Golden Chopsticks. I guess I would have the key be a to-go box. But the way I'd lose the most amount of weight is if I had the portal leading to my favorite kayaking spot up north. I could ride the river daily if I could just get up there daily. That key would definitely be clicking the heels on my water shoes. Yeah, there you go.
I wish I was kayaking.
I think I'll just read one more. Floofy Shoob says, a portal between my home and the grocery store. No more having to lug all that stuff in from the car. Also, oh no, I forgot to pick up blank.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel you there. I remember when I was building my arcade cabinet, every time I would go to the hardware store, I would come home and realize 2 more things I forgot to get from the hardware store.
Yep.
So I'd go back the next day and then come home and forget 2 more things I was supposed to get.
Yep.
Anyway, that's just how it is, I guess. So that was our last social media question. Our next social media question is, have you ever destroyed an artifact or a powerful magic item? How did you do it?
Gabe, have I?
I don't recall. I think during Age of Worms, you guys used a Sphere of Annihilation to destroy what is essentially an artifact, Kios's cloak, I think.
Sure. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We had the rod of...
Yeah, you guys had a talisman of the sphere that you got in an earlier adventure that got had lost its power and you regained its power at some point.
Yeah, and then we teleported to the Tomb of Horror.
Yeah, you teleported to the Tomb of Horrors, yeah.
Yeah, to take this Sphere of Annihilation out of the demon mouth thing. And then we put it into we carefully put it into a bag of holding.
Into a portable hole, I think specifically.
Portable hole. Yeah, okay. And yeah, we carefully put it into a portable hole, and then I pulled it out during the fight with Kios.
Yeah, and then it was Kios then had to destroy the Sphere of Annihilation, otherwise you could keep using it against him. And that's what caused the whole tower to get teleported to a different plane.
Right, so yeah, because he cast Gate on it, right?
Yes, and that's one of the effects that can happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think in my recollection, that's the closest that any of us have ever, that's the closest thing that we've ever done.
I mean, in that same campaign, I think we found part of an artifact, like that staff or whatever.
Yeah, the Rod of 7 Parts. Yeah, we've encountered various artifacts in games that we've played in or that I've run or that Jay ran or whatever. But as far as destroying one, I don't think that's usually been the point. So, there was that one time we all got together in that fellowship and we had to throw that ring into that volcano or whatever.
Yeah, that was.
We just walked into Mordor and.
Yeah, I wouldn't count that just because it was so easy. We just kind of we rode
we
on
asked
some
Gandalf to help us with those eagles.
Yeah, we asked some eagles to fly us there, and then we walked the rest of the way, and it was fine.
Yeah, it totally happened. So yeah, I don't like Jeff. I don't really have an example of one that I've done myself, but yeah, I'm interested to see if any of our listeners have. So that'll do it for our questions for today. So before we close out, let's wind down a little bit. Let's relax. Let's take a deep breath. Let's remember those who have come before us, who have given their lives so that we may have a better world to live in. Let's remember them as we toss another log onto the funeral pyre. Today's funeral pyre was submitted by Wild Ride 465 on Reddit, and they said, how big of an explosion could it be? 3 of 5 dead. Breaking a powerful magical artifact to close a portal. So if it's not obvious where I got the idea for that social media question, it should be now. Yeah. So they destroyed a powerful artifact to close a portal, and maybe didn't plan it out very well, and as a result, 3 of the 5 party members are dead.
Yeah. Oof.
So, I guess let's raise a glass in memory of Wild Ride 465's party, who I guess tells us 3 out of 5 ain't bad. Clink. All right, that'll do it for today. To submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, or stories for the funeral pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, links to media mentioned on the show, and running lists of questions and magic items, check out interpartyconflict.com. Join the discussion on social media. You can find us on Facebook. We are on Reddit. We're on our Interparty Discord. We're on Twitter at InPartyConflict. We've got our weekly social media questions, so if you answer them, your answers might end up on the show. You can find us on the podcatcher of your choice. We're on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere you download podcasts. Please rate, review, subscribe, or just tell a friend. If you'd like to support the show, check out the rewards at patreon.com/InterpartyConflict. We have a few different tiers, so anything you can spare, even $1 a month, would go towards making the show better, and you'll get bonus content for it. Jeff, tell us about FriendQuest.
FriendQuest is a YouTube channel where you can watch us play video games.
Yes. Speaking of which, check out my side project, the Arcade Memories Podcast. If you'd like to submit your own childhood memories of going to the arcade, you can send those to me at arcadememoriespodcast@gmail.com. Also, head over to bit.ly/interpartyconflict to take a short survey about our show. What you like, what you don't like, etc. And just for taking it, you'll get 2 free printable board games, courtesy of Mary and Tom, over at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hacker's RPG. So, Jeff, until next time.
Hey, Gabe, is this podcast vegan?
I don't know.